All right, so I'll be talking about Phoenix, and I'm just on their homepage here. They just released version 1.0.0, and so they're into the major versions and out of the minor versions. So what I've been working on is implementing Phoenix and Elixir to work with React.js using Webpack and React Hot Reloader. So the first thing I did when I started going with Phoenix was just to get Phoenix up and running, and they have a great guide. If you just click on their guides there, and on the left-hand side, you can click up and running, and they'll run through this guide here just to get started. Basically, you have to install Elixir first into your command line, so then you can use mix, which is just Elixir, and then you can actually install the Phoenix project by using mix phoenix.new. And that'll create a Phoenix project for you to get going. So this is a great guide on how to get running. They even included how to use IEX, which I'll talk about later on. Yeah, a great place to get started with Phoenix. And then to get started with Webpack and getting it working into Phoenix, I found two great blog posts about these things, and one of them is this blog post here, as well as this one here, and we'll link those. So with Phoenix here, something about Phoenix is they come with Brunch, and that's how they used their asset pipeline to build all the assets. And so one thing we wanted to do was use Webpack instead of Brunch because we prefer Webpack. Especially with working with React and the React Hot Reloader. So a great way to easily install Phoenix without Brunch is they have a parameter --no--brunch. So you just run mix Phoenix new in that. But then I already had a Phoenix project installed, and so I liked this blog post here because they just gave me a simple command to run to uninstall all the Brunch stuff. So if you're already to that point, you can just use this here. And then this npm install will install your Babel, React, and React Hot Loader, as well as Webpack. So great little shortcut here. But then the next thing is getting Webpack all configured. And so we have the normal Webpack config.js. And I'm going to show you where I stick that in my project, but I want to jump down here a little bit. And of course, you need to make your Webpack dev server.js and make it executable as well. And then we're going to jump right into the config files for Phoenix and Elixir. To actually watch our Webpack dev server.js. And then we also, so with Phoenix and Elixir, since it's built to watch assets and do a live reload, we're going to use our own solution, which is reloader and using Webpack to watch our assets. So we need to comment out this line so that we aren't double reloading or having any conflictions. So this is just watching your GIS folder, CSS, all those assets, and we don't want to watch those anymore from Phoenix. So the next thing is we have our entry for the Webpack stuff. So this is how they got that all started up. And then, of course, just setting up a basic application for React. I actually pulled in the React Starter app from Atomic Jolt into this project just to get a simple React app up and going really quick. So that's a great resource. And then down here, we have a few more configuration with Phoenix. So something Phoenix does is it compiles all its assets with the task phoenix.digest here. So this is something you run before deploying. So something we need to do is we need to run Webpack when we actually compile everything. So this is the digest.ex, and basically all he does is add in the webpack.js and then run it with the args. And this is how you just get that all set up. So then when you get down to the deployment, I actually haven't done deployment yet, so there's a lot of experimenting I still have yet to do in this area, but this should help get started in that path. Yeah, so it's pretty simple to get Webpack installed. And then the next part is just kind of, I'm going to run through what Phoenix has inside of all these folders and where React actually sits and how it gets put into Phoenix. So the first place I'm going to hit is the config folder. Inside of the Phoenix project, you'll always have a config folder, and you basically have a config.exs and then your dev environment and production environment and your test environment. This is also where I stuck the webpack.config. I just felt like it was a good spot to stick it. I might end up moving it around. I haven't determined where I want everything to sit, but this is a config folder, so it felt kind of right to stick it in there for now. So the first thing is in this this dev.exs. Inside here, I don't actually use that watchers, but then you can also see I commented out the assets there, like we were talking about. This is also where you can configure the port you're running on, a few other configuration stuff inside of here. And then this is also where you configure your database connection for your dev environment. And then additionally, in your production environment, you'll do the same inside of here. I haven't actually set up any of this quite yet, but so. And then you have your Webpack config, just basic Webpack stuff, all your loaders and the ports you're going to run those on. So I actually just stick those as constants, and then I put them into the Webpack right here. So jumping down, I'm going to just jump right into this web folder. I guess deps is that's where your Phoenix Elixir dependencies come from. Just kind of like how you have your package JSON for your JavaScript stuff, you have a mix.exs, and then your dependencies are listed here. So you can see Phoenix is a dependency, which actually makes it really easy to update to the latest Phoenix. Phoenix Ecto is how you connect to your databases, as well as the Postgres, Phoenix HTML, and the Phoenix Live Reloader, stuff like that. And then I have been using Guardian, which is a token authentication, and Come On In does password hashing. And Cowboy is something Phoenix uses, I believe, with their asset pipeline as well. I haven't played with that too much.
I think Cowboy is the actual web server.
Oh yeah, that sounds right. So cool. So, and then I actually stuck the Webpack hot in the top directory. I might end up sticking that down into the web folder. I haven't really decided where I want to make that sit, but it's kind of nice because I hit the top directory, and to run the actual server, I can run mix-phoenix.server. The other thing you can do is use IEX. So I mentioned that earlier. I'm just going to briefly touch on that because it's kind of important for development tools, and it took me a little bit of digging to find this, which I was kind of surprised. So IEX basically handles debugging just like Bybug does in Rails. So to use IEX, first you require IEX inside of your script, wherever you want to use it. So I'll show you a controller that actually has it in there. And then instead of running mix Phoenix server, you run IEX-s mix Phoenix.server. So this is a different way to start up your server. And that'll get it all going. And then anywhere you want to actually, place a Bybug kind of thing, it's IEX.pry, and that'll allow you to break into that script and debug all the variables and stuff going on in there. So you can see here, it has a command line, so I can actually do stuff in here. Yeah, it's pretty nice. So kind of combined your Rails console with your actual Rails server, but it just kind of all together in one kind of unique thing. So the second thing is getting your Webpack started. So I just use npm start, and that'll compile your Webpack, all that scripts and stuff. So I'm going to jump into this web directory now. And inside of here, we have channels, and these are basically your sockets. So the the basic is the user socket. So what you do is you do Phoenix React.user socket, and it uses Phoenix.socket. What you can do is define channels. So channels allow for multiple users to connect to a channel, and then you can pretty much broadcast messages from that channel, and anybody who is subscribed to that channel will receive that message. So for example, a user connects to rooms, and the star here allows for anything. So it could be like rooms, apples, or rooms, oranges, and they'll connect to the same room channel. But then if a user's in the apples, they won't get messages from the oranges, vice versa. But if they're both in apples, then they'll get the same messages when we broadcast. So for instance, I have this handles like on join, and then this is setting up like a private room. So we can say, oh, you're unauthorized to enter this room. But if they get into the room and then we get a new message from one of the users, we'll actually broadcast to anybody subscribed to that channel through their socket with this event message and this data here. So that's how that works. And then the handle out, actually, I believe, I haven't experimented too much with this, but the handle out will actually, when this message is being broadcasted out, it'll go through this handle out. So if you had like last minute things you wanted to modify, you could do it there. So I guess I just touched on channels, but I want to back up a little bit and go into the router. So this is kind of where everything pipes through from the browser, or even you could have like clients on any platform. It's all going to go through this router. And so for instance, this is handling this scope here. The index is piping through the browser in the browser session. And then this is basically handling all the browser stuff. So we have a page controller in here when the user hits the index directory. So what happens is this pipe through is a really nice thing, because what happens is we pipe it through these pipelines. And inside these pipelines, we can just specify certain things like, oh, you can accept HTML. We need to fetch the session, protect from forgery. So this is like CSRF token stuff. And then you can even define your own. So like right here, I did plug default settings. And down here, I have a private function that has my default settings. And I'm going to show you how this works with React. But what we needed to do was when the user hits the web page, we had basic tokens and URLs that we want the client to have. So what we do is we pipe it through the browser with the default settings, and then what this happens is we assign the connection default settings to this object default settings here. So inside of this default settings, this sets up a object for us, so a hash. We say, okay, our API URL is /API. Our JOT token is this token, which is a private method here that we actually use Guardian right there to assign the current user a token to use. And then our CSRF token is this get CSRF token that's built into Phoenix. So we assign that, and then I'll show you how that renders actually into Phoenix and Elixir. So important thing is we set that API URL. Now you can see we have a scope API which matches up with that. And so this is actually going to, now we have a different pipeline for anybody who's going to pull or get data, post data. It's going to run through this. So we pipe it through the API, and then we actually see this Guardian plug. We verify the header and load resource. So this, now we check that JOT token out and see, okay, and we also accept only JSON from this plug. So that's a really cool thing, is the router is just really powerful in what you can actually use these pipelines for. So you can just create a whole new pipeline for like another separate application or client. So really great. And then the web is, I think, the top level above the router. So you can see define router, use Phoenix router. So this kind of just sticks everything together. I haven't played with this too much, but that's pretty much as I know about that. So so let's jump into the controllers. The first thing is you see this page controller, which was part of the browser. All we're doing is rendering the index.html, which is living inside of our templates. So here's our index.html. That's all it is. But above that, we have a layout folder. and that is sitting our app.html. So if you remember that default settings, I'm going to talk about that here. But this is the top level kind of wrapper, and then we render the index HTML inside of that. So you can see within here, we use a JavaScript and we say window.default settings equals, and we reference that assigns object. And that assigns object is the same thing as we're doing this assign object or this assign method here. So from that, we're able to get our default settings out, and we say it's safe, so that it just basically puts the JSON right in there for us. So that's how we get our default settings into it. And then this is how we render our Webpack bundle.js. So basically, if we're in our dev environment, we use the localhost. If we're in our production environment or some other environment, for instance, we're going to go to our static path, add our connection, and go to the JS bundle.js and stick that script in there. So now you're probably wondering, is there a question at this point, or just break for a second?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay. So our JS folder inside of our static is our JS folder, and this is actually where I stuck React to live. So this app.jsx is actually our entry for React. Inside of here, I've stuck a few code for relay because I was playing around with that. So if you do a global find for the hash relay, you'll be able to find some code. I haven't been able to get GraphQL quite working with Phoenix and Elixir yet, but it's a down the road kind of project. So, but then you have all of the React related stuff. We're using React routers, so we have the routes in here and our components, all that sort of stuff. But one of the important things is we use the window.default settings in our settings action to load all that stuff in. So that's how we get the default settings into React. So then the last thing, well, a few more things, but the API folder contains just controllers for the API. So you can see Phoenix React.api matches up with our Phoenix React.api scope, so in our router. So that's how we reference those. And I'm still flushing out these files here, but I'm getting it so that it'll connect and authenticate users and create sessions. Something similar to like Devise, how that functions. Unfortunately, right now there isn't quite a Devise-like solution in Phoenix and Elixir. The community is putting stuff together, or so they say. I haven't seen anything quite yet, but it's one of the big things in the community right now in Phoenix and Elixir is how to do authentication the best way. A lot of people are saying just use Guardian and implement your own. So that's kind of what I'm starting out with, is just using Guardian. So, and then we have models here, and these models are where we actually define our schema and methods for those. So this is like a user here. And instead of actually having like a schema.rb like you would in Rails, the schema actually sits inside of the models. And it's kind of nice because you can see your schema right here as you're coding your methods. And then you can set your required and optional fields here. So I think I touched on everything as far as getting started with Phoenix and React. So is there any questions?
How do you modify the schema?
So you can actually just write your fields in here, and then in your command line, you can, it's like mix, there's a migration that you generate. I can't quite remember how to do it, but if you go into their guides again and go to models, I believe. Oh, wait, let's see, models. Ecto models is what I was looking at. They'll run through on how to modify your schema and do, so you do ecto create to create your database. And then you generate, let's see, down here, it's creating a project. It's running your project. They run through the whole thing inside of here, it looks like. Somewhere in here, I don't remember where I was looking at, but they'll show you how to actually generate the migrations. And I guess that's one other thing I forgot to mention is there's a bunch of generators with Phoenix as far as like you can just generate up models, controllers, kind of the base generators that kind of Rails does. Phoenix kind of wants to be Rails, but just built for Elixir. The cool thing about Phoenix and Elixir is it just is all about speed rather than Rails being conveniency over it. So hopefully that answers your question, but yeah.
Thanks.
Cool. Is there any other questions? All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Jaden.
Thank you.